Hey everybody, welcome to another installment of Martin Booth's Cannabis, a History. Yeah, it's backwards, but y'all are sentient beings that can figure that out. So, um, hope everybody's doing good today. I'm gonna get right into it. So, right where we left off from part 11. This is part 12. Here we go, and we're midway through chapter 8. Okay. Let me get a good cough in before we begin. All right. The college president, Eliphalet Knott, an eccentric educational genius who was to rule over the establishment for half a century, exerted a great influence over Ludlow. Despite this, Ludlow was not always in Knott's favor, being fined for cutting classes. That said, it appears Knott himself, who was a strict disciplinarian, was not beyond bending the rules. To finance higher education and his college, he instigated a statewide lottery, but was accused of manipulating the results and charged with corruption. As a student, Ludlow was regarded by his peers as being somewhat odd, sometimes aloof and superior, and at first not overly popular, although he was generally found to be amiable, a proficient conversationalist, and on occasion, good company. Part of his detachment from his fellow students may almost certainly be put down to the fact that he was again experimenting with hashish, having found a pharmacist in the town who would oblige him. Informed by the pharmacist that what he was providing was of a weaker strength than that which Anderson had supplied, one evening Ludlow took a heavy dose of 50 grains, about 3 grams. By midnight, nothing having happened, he went to bed, only to wake in the night to a realm, quote, realm of the most perfect clarity of view, yet terrible with an infinitude of demoniac shadows, unquote. Soon, a funeral bier bearing a corpse surrounded by candles appeared at his bedside. He tried to crawl away from it, only to discover the walls of his room were moving in on him, the ceiling simultaneously descending. After a short time, the ceiling pressed him against the corpse, and all went black. Then Ludlow found himself in the place of the corpse. A demon of white-hot iron chanted at him, accompanied by others. They vanished, and Ludlow, with a powerful thirst, discovered himself by a vast fountain in a European village. Passing through a crystal gate into a rose-covered valley, he was greeted by a multitude proclaiming him their liberator. It was now, he realized, his soul had left his body, but later, a voice ordered it to return whence it had come. To what extent the images related to Ludlow's recent reading is unknown, but Dulcinos states that he had not long before read Edgar Allan Poe's The Pit and the Pendulum. It's one of my favorites, which may well have partially governed his hallucinations. As for the metempsychosis, or extracorporeal experience This is not uncommon in near-death situations or under the influence of a number of drugs, including hashish and lysergic acid diethylamide (LSD). 3 grams, what he had, and probably wasn't used to that kind of potency. So yeah, but yeah. But you're not supposed to just jump to 3 grams. You're supposed to kind of work your way up to that, if you're going to have that much at a time, ever. Um, you know. So it sounds like he just kind of jumped up, to that, hit him pretty hard there. The next morning, see, he had such a way with words when he wrote these things down. That's why we are reading about him right now. The next morning, Ludlow felt refreshed, but concerned by the demonic nature of his experiment. He vowed to experiment with the drug of sorcery no more. It was a vow he was soon to break. After a while, Ludlow left a few of his fellow students, let a few of his fellow students in on his secret, and they sat in on his sessions, partly to observe and partly to be there to comfort or steady him if required. In a comparatively short space of time, he discovered that continued and regular use of hashish caused his experiences to meld together, one leading into the next, which began, as it were, where the last left off. His life became one unbroken yet checkered dream, close quote. Ludlow's general academic studies seem not to have been adversely affected by his hashish habit. Quotes. His overall grades, neither poor nor spectacular, but there was one subject in which he excelled. It was called Kames, Kames. I'm not familiar. Kames, and was taught personally by Knott. Based upon the book Elements of Criticism, written by Henry Home, Lord Kames, I'm just going to say it like that, it offered a new approach to aesthetics with which Knott was in full accord. Part of this course involved the students reading their work aloud to their peers. Ludlow, already an accomplished storyteller, with a vivid and hashish-enhanced, in parentheses, imagination, was in his element. As a consequence, his literary skills were honed, aided on occasion by his letting himself and some of his peers into a local church to which they could obtain the key, where they gave orations that were mutually criticized. They'd use the church. He also wrote verse, including love poems, to various fellow female students, contributed a poem entitled The Hymn of the Soul of Man to the college student journal, The New Era, and penned the Union Terrace Song for a student society. As a result of the latter, he was invited by Knott to compose an ode to the college. This he did. He called it Ode to Old Union, and set to the tune of a traditional drinking ballad. It reads, okay, and so this is the quotes in the ballad, or his thing, but I don't know the tune of the traditional drinking ballad, so I'll just try to wing it, and read it as best I can. I haven't read this in a long time, so I didn't read ahead. So he called it Ode to the Old Union. Okay. if you want to look it up as well, and see how it's structured, because it's in like a poem structure. Okay. Well, you can't see that on the page, but it is. It's not set like a normal paragraph. It's like a, you know what I mean? Narrower poem structure. Okay. Ode to Old Union, and set to the tune of a traditional drinking ballad. It reads, "Let the Grecian dream of his sacred stream, and sing of the brave adorning that Phoebus weaves from his laurel leaves at the golden gates of morning. But the brook that bounds through old Union's grounds gleams bright as a Delphic water, and a prize as fair as a god may wear is a dip from our alma mater." And then the chorus, okay. "Then here's to thee, thou brave and free, old Union, smiling o'er us, and for many a day as thy walls grow gray, may they ring with thy children's chorus." Close quote. This is still sung by the Union College student body today. Hey, shout me out. Say something if you're an alma mater of that place. Like to hear from you. Be kind of synchronicity if any of you ever happened upon this video. Anyway, considering the visual imagery and the lyrics in the light of Ludlow's hashish experiments, this must make it the only college song in the United States to have been written influenced by dope. He says dope. I don't like the word dope. That's the author's words. So whenever that comes up, I'll read it. But I don't like that term for cannabis. Now, that originally comes from like opium, heroin. That's dope. And so that's the main reason I don't like it. It's like a misnomer on cannabis. I think it makes you dopey. Not necessarily, unless you're already dopey. Doesn't make you that way. So, but this Martin Booth, the author of this, is a British person. I probably haven't ever said that. He's English, British, okay, from the UK, or was. He was alive and wrote this. So, slightly different slang over there still, and might not be as derogatory of a thing to say there about it. I don't know. Not sure. Never been there. So, but he's from there. So, some of the thing, and when he focuses on meters or kilometers or something like that, that's why. This is a European or originated book from the UK. Okay. So, but yeah, influence. So yeah, isn't that funny? And I would argue that probably isn't the only alma mater song written or influenced by cannabis or of course other things too. It's just not as known or unknown, okay, about those authors, writers, okay. Don't think we know as much as you might think we know, or your teacher made you think we know. We don't know as much as we think we know a lot of the time. Humble yourselves about what you think you know about anything, really, because that'll open you up to not being too overconfident about things. It's good to be confident, but you can go too far. Anyway, here we go. With his literary skills enhancing his reputation, Ludlow is amazing. So I love that this whole section is Ludlow, about Fitzhugh Ludlow. So with his literary skills enhancing his reputation amongst his contemporaries, not to mention his allowing a select number in on his secret, Ludlow was admitted into the Kappa Alpha Society, the first undergraduate fraternity in the USA. And you gotta remember, this is kind of early on in, collegiate history of America or something, whatever it is, be classified as. Um, it was also a literary society which held weekly meetings throughout the college term at which literary, political, and philosophical issues were debated. Hmm, that's pretty cool. Like a civics idea. The idea of civics class. I wish they'd bring that back. Not just social studies. See what they did? They combined like history and civics into social studies. No. Get rid of social studies. Bring back history on one and civics. Have two different things, and even a government class separate from history class or civics class. That'd be pretty good too. You have government, history, and civics. That's what I think would be ideal, instead of just having a social studies class, which is laughable these days. Sorry, the textbooks. I laugh at them if I read them, and be disappointed, and then when I think about it, get angry about it because all our kids are being fed a bunch of crap and incomplete things too. If they're in, if there are strings of truth within some of it, just barely in a modern textbook for a middle school or high school. It's kind of pitiful, and Lord, I don't even want to look at them now. It's been a while since I've seen one. It's been, I can say, 10 years since I've seen something like that, but I'm sure they haven't gotten any better. And they're probably worse. There's only three main manufacturers of all like, elementary, middle, and high school level textbooks in this country. I don't know, if you're aware, and I could make a whole daggone video about that. But those three are all in Texas. Okay, Houghton Mifflin, Rand McNally, I think, if that's one, and one other, all down in Texas. And not that the location has much to do with it. It's just that, there's just three and they're close together, and they're older, and they've been doing it for a long time. And I don't know how they've gotten the exclusive on. Well, at least, it's not a monopoly because there's three of them. Okay. And then there's like one or two new ones, or maybe more, I'm not aware of, that the textbook publishing companies that have popped up out in the West Coast states. Possibly California, Oregon, I'm not sure. So there are some newer ones that are out there, and interestingly, they do, they probably do streak more on a different narrative of history and certain things, and societal stuff than the three textbook companies in Texas, that are older and more established and more conservative overall. Okay. But not that that has much to do with it, because it's just revisionist history all around. Whether you're coming from the right or the left, it's happening. The lefties, that's a newer thing with the textbook publishing propaganda. That's all. It's just newer, and you could argue maybe more effective lately. Some of the stuff in there, that version of revisionist history, as opposed to the version of revisionist history that we are more familiar with, my generation and on back, from those three textbook publishing companies in Texas. Okay. There's a lot about that. Okay. I don't want to go too much, but I just had to say that. Okay. And they're manipulating, especially history books. I'm not as familiar with how they're messing with the other subjects as much, or if they can with, math, and, math books kind of immune, but definitely science books. There's questions all in there and things that are left out. And there's not hardly any direct quotes from people anymore, like you find in a history book like this. That's not a school textbook. You have direct quotes, you're familiar with. I think us as adults need to maybe sit down with these middle school and high school, in particular, history textbooks, and look at them. Really look at them, read them, see what they're saying. Whichever way you're coming at it, doesn't matter. Just be aware that our history has been messed with and revised, and not just once, but over and over. But there's elements within history as we know it that have, there's elements of truth sprinkled all in it. But like I've said before, history itself is subjective. Like we're looking through a certain glass, at a certain angle, at a certain, in a certain perspective. And of course that shifts around and changes and might get more focused sometimes as we go forward and learn more about the past. Okay? Things can get more accurate sometimes about how we see it, about the true past, because the past is inviolate. Okay? Past. That's objective. That is what happened for real. History is the view through. Okay? The past is what history is looking, history is the gaze that we have on the past. Okay? And that's probably not even emphasized enough in our history classrooms. Okay? Just saying. Doesn't take needing a degree to realize and be aware of certain things. Okay? And know the things that you're not, and to know, when you don't know certain things too. And to be humble at that point, and to be, and to learn, be open to learn things too. But to also not get your toes stepped on. Keep your principles about you, and know that there's a bunch of crap out there when it comes to how we're teaching our children. Okay? There needs to be some kind of revolution within the school system. I don't even know how that would happen at this point. But maybe a nudge or a jab at it at the public school system might actually be healthy overall going forward. I've always been for the public education system. My parents and what they believe, how they raised me. And yeah, I still do feel like that's we need that. But to punch at it a little, to nudge it, to offer competition to it. From the private marketplace. Via independent and private schools. And I think the private school systems are dominated too much by the religions and the denominations of religions that run the Christian academies and the Catholic schools, okay? And the Protestant Christian academies as well. Started popping up all over. There needs to be more private, independent, secular schools, okay? K through 12, like I went to. I had the fortune to be able to go to from my 8th grade year to graduating from high school. at University Heights Academy in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. It's pretty unique because there's not that many private, independent, not attached to any religious denomination or affiliation with any church. See, that's rare. That's rare in the United States. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so those of you that are more conservative minded that might see this, probably not, that are maybe more for or think about school vouchers, maybe for a while at least, try them out. Push push the public system, nudge it, compete with it, and then that will maybe hone the public system and make it better. Okay, and then at a certain point in time, then we can pass another legislation to remove the voucher program once it's done its job, you know, uh, to the public one. Okay, so I'm not for taking the public one away. No, 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 no. It's to do something to strengthen it over the longer term. Okay, instead of thinking shorter term about things, thinking more the longer term about that. Yeah, and it might take longer, but for real change to occur, to be seen in the hopefully near enough future for us, for our children, we'll be able to see it different and in a better way. Okay, so there needs to be, in my view, more private, independent, secular K through 12 schools. Okay, that are accredited correctly by the state they're in, and all of that. Okay, and UHA, if you want to look, is a model of it. It could be a template for more. Not that there should be a franchise. I don't think that's a good idea. Keep it more localized and decentralized would be better. But you can use something as a template, as an example, and yeah, copy it. Try to copy it. Try to take the better, parts from what you see there in that school that already exists. I think they started in '78, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong. Might be like 72 or 73. But anyway, in the 70s. I have forgotten. Sorry, UHA. But I know many of my teachers there that taught there had gone there at the beginning of the school's, founding, the opening of the school. So that was pretty neat. And be able to have a small enough K through 12, kindergarten through 12th grade, that you can put under a large one roof, basically. But now they've built on. And there's like a compound of buildings. It's a small campus, pretty much. I mean, it ends up being like a small campus, small college campus at the scale that UHA has. And I think they've gotten bigger since I graduated in '99. Back then, there was around 300, maybe 330 if you count or 360 if you count the pre-K, because there was a pre-K program there too. It went all the way through. But it was at a certain scale that was manageable. Okay? So you had like 360 total population from pre-K through 12th grade. Okay? And when I was in high school there, from my ninth grade, from ninth grade to 12th grade, there was about roughly, generally, anywhere from about 90 on the lower end. This is total high school population, student population. There would be about at the low end 90, for those 4 grades. Higher end, a little over 100. Okay, maybe 105, 108, something like that, at the top end of that. Because every year and every half a year, people would go and come from there, and yeah, more so, possibly more fluid like that there than at a public school. What you would see, and it was smaller because so everybody noticed when somebody would be coming or going too, you know, and I knew everybody's name in high school all the time that I went there, and that was really nice, very unique and special. And only private, usually 98%, 99% here in this country, you'd have private Catholic schools and private Protestant academies and schools. They're the ones that could, understand and that that feeling and the size, nothing like it. So each class varied. My class over time, there was a couple of years where we were the largest class in school, my class, but then we shrunk and then gained a little more and shrunk a little more over time. But generally, like in 8th grade, starting out, it was a pretty big class. I think it was the biggest class in the school in 8th grade, or the second biggest behind 7th grade. Not sure. 7th grade and 8th grade were the big ones when I started there in 8th grade, and we were about from 25 to 28 kids in the class. Yeah. And we had different classes, and we'd go from room to room, and like that too. It wasn't just a one-room schoolhouse. No. So it was really cool. I'm very grateful that I was in the time, the place, and at that time to go there. And there should be more of those. And if there were more of those, it would be true competition for, and if they were affordable enough for people, of course. And with the school voucher program, UHA was always pro school voucher program when I was there, and I learned to understand why. Of course, it would help them, and it would help the idea of them as a template to grow all over, anywhere. Because then, people could actually have an alternative choice for free via the voucher system. That could be that to send their kids to a private, secular, academic high school or elementary school or middle school or all three. Okay? Instead of the public ones. UHA is that. It's like a little seed. It's just there. And there's only very handful, like less than probably 6 others, I would say. Maybe, well, less than 10, liberally saying, less than, that there's that many in this country of that specific type of K through 12 private school. Okay. And yeah, it's really cool. And yeah, they call themselves a college prep school, college preparatory school. And for most people that go there, went there and go there now still, it is. But for me, it was more like a life prep school. Not as much the college prep school. And so I'm grateful for it and appreciate it in that way. Maybe, in a different way than most of my peers and friends that went there or have gone there and know what I'm talking about about it. So, yeah, just wanted to say that. We were more liberated there, you know. But yeah, most people, families, most kids' families were more conservative leaning. Every year we do the mock poll on, voting and all that whenever there was elections. And it always was like 60-40 at least. 60% conservative there, 40% more liberal or more Democrat on all that back then. And so that kind of showed you how it was split like that. But as young kids or young adults, or teenagers, we had way more freedom than in public school. We just did. And yes, UHA had liability, over us, and they had to make sure we were okay during school hours, or they could be in trouble if something happened to us. And there were a few incidents over the years that, were dangerous to the school because somebody would get in trouble with, like a misunderstanding happened with the car one time, and one of us, one of the students, one of my friends, got pulled over and cuffed and put in the back of a car when it was his friend's Allison's car, and he had gotten permission from her or from her parent. I forget what the story was, but it was definitely a misunderstanding. And but it all got straightened out, But yeah, oh, school's mad that happened during school hours. So because we were starting to drive, and a lot of us had cars, you know, a lot of a lot of a lot of them, a lot of us were more fortunate than you could say the general population of kids in the town. So there was a lot of driving, a lot of cars and stuff. Right when somebody hit 16, sometimes they had a nice newer car there. So yeah, that was a big mistake, and but it was scary. It was scary for Allison. It was scary for the guy that was mistakenly thought of as a car thief. So, but that got all worked out and it was fine. But that kind of thing, we were able to come and go more. We'd sign in and sign out. You could sign out during certain periods, or at least. But then they started cracking down on us a little more. Certain years that I was there, So one year we might have a little more freedom to be able to come and go like that. If we had a car, we were able to go on study hall breaks or lunch real quick and go get something up the road and be able to leave and come back. It was so nice. And I know that was like a luxury. We knew, most of us knew, and we're grateful of that privilege, that luxury of being able to go and then come back. You have to sign back in, or you could get in trouble, and so had to follow the rules. But if you did, then you could go and come back within certain periods of the day, and it was really nice. But yeah, I think back, and that independent school was liable for liable for us. Like if we would have gotten in a wreck during that time, or caused a wreck, or caused somebody else to be hurt in a wreck, or any other crime or something that could have occurred when we left the school and then came, So they did leave themselves kind of more open in a way legally, that maybe a lot of private schools wouldn't want to copy that. And that's why in other years they did clamp down on that, and it wasn't as liberated that way. It was a little harder to leave, like certain years. But you still could, if if you had all the, if you could, and you hadn't gotten in trouble before. It's almost like it was everybody knew everybody. So you ended up having like a social credit system just naturally occurring with all of the teachers, all of the staff, and the children and the students. Okay, so they knew who they could kind of let go for an hour during their study hall period, and who they may not want to. So they could be selective. Oh yeah, because it was a private school, they could kind of have their own rules, make their own rules that way. When in a public school, each individual public school doesn't have as much sovereignty, as much individual sovereignty over their rules. Okay, and how if a rule applies to one, that it has to apply to everyone. I mean, and that does sound fair most of the time. But in a private school, you can experiment with something like a social credit system, or really, it just happened. It just did. It just naturally does in a place that small. Okay, with that many staff, that many adults around, and the ratio of adults to young people, children. Okay, just makes sense, right? So when a staff person that's been there a couple of years ends up knowing every student's name within the first year that they're there, that really helps with a lot of that. And so, yeah, they could be more selective about their rules. And I was glad sometimes because I got in trouble a few times that I could have gotten in more, that they could have disciplined me more than they did. Yeah, that was like 90% of the time when I got in trouble. I feel like they could have been a little, I didn't get in trouble bad, and that often. Okay, don't get it wrong, but, sometimes. There was one or two times where I maybe should have been more punished for doing that kind of thing. We'll just leave it at that. But I had really nice, caring, supportive adults that were knowledgeable and knew us over time. Okay, they became to know their students in a way that just can't be in a bigger place. Okay, with less faculty, way less faculty to student ratio. That matters. Okay, that matters a lot. And that ratio is way out of whack in the public system. Yeah, so that needs work as well. There's a lot that needs work in the public education system, in my view. And yeah, UHA wasn't perfect. No, it wasn't the ideal like that. But it's quite a template as an alternative, as a true alternative approach and situation and dynamic and scale and everything to the public system as it stands today. Okay? So, yeah, I'm kind of for school vouchers now. Whereas when I went there, I was kind of anti that idea. I didn't really get why, certain people were all for it. But now I do. I thought they just wanted it because yes, of course it's obvious it would have helped UHA and be a little bigger, and which I don't think, I want UHA to thrive, but there should be a cap on that template. I feel like, or the template itself is ruined. If the school is too big and the scale gets too large from faculty to student, like I said, too out of whack, If it becomes too much like the public education system of today, if a place like UHA becomes too much like that place, too big, then it's gone. It messes up the whole idea. It throws the whole template out of whack. You have to keep it at a certain scale of student to faculty ratio. Now you could have it bigger, you could scale it up, but you better keep that student to faculty ratio the same, or even better. The bigger it is, okay? The bigger it is, the more volume of faculty to keep that idea working that I experienced at my private school, okay? It was a secular, independent school. So, I'm not as familiar with the way Catholic schools and Protestant schools are run. But, yeah, needs to be more places like the one I went to. And they need to be affordable. And then, yeah, the voucher system would just propel it immediately. You'd have those schools popping up like crazy, because it'd be a really good enterprise for local investors, people that have money locally that want to invest in local businesses, business ventures, and startups. I could see where that'd be like immediate. You'd have, uh, you could immediately have over a dozen of the local towns, people that have money, basically, and they're already investors and owners and things in the town, immediately want to jump on board a serious idea of that. If somebody came to them with it seriously, for their town, and the school voucher system was known to either be coming up assuredly, certainly, or already in place, those places would be popping up like crazy and be investors in it like crazy, and for good reason. It'd be a great way to invest a certain amount, if you had it to, and I could see them popping up everywhere. And you could use older buildings. You could, renovate and use buildings that already exist when you can for these new independent schools, or build whole new ones, because it would be worth it and still profitable. And even more so sometimes, because renovations are so expensive on old buildings that, people would still do them, even if you don't have old buildings to use. So, that needs to happen. It does. And I think it would temper and strengthen and hone and better the public system over a couple decades. Give it a decade. Look at it then. Give it another decade, and then, yeah, the voucher program could end at some point. Maybe it shouldn't last forever. Maybe that's how it should come in too. This is a limited opportunity. We're going to do this over the next 10 years. You could say. But at that point, we'll review it and see if we'll continue it or not. Okay? And a lot of things could be done that way. Policies don't have to be permanent. When they pass new things and and create new legislation, these policies don't have to be written as permanent and have to be overruled by a new legislation. It should be more fluid. I feel like that certain policies could be experimental policy projects, and you could put a cap of time. Let's give this idea 5 years, see if it works, then review it. Let's give this idea 10 years, see if it works. And if it doesn't, throw it out. And do things like that. Social experimentation, governmental experimentation to a limit either direction, I think would be very healthy. And keep things more fluid. And, in a parliamentary system, it is more fluid like that. But our system here in the United States has some advantages over the parliamentary system. I do realize that. It's just very slow and sluggish compared to a lot of the way the parliamentary systems run. And that's why there's more of those in the world, I do believe, because they just are more fluid. And the idea of this more temporary legislation and it being more of a revolving door over time is something that parliamentary systems are better at and do already. And we could and should try to adopt that more into our slower system, arguably a better system, but it's definitely and not that arguably a slower system than a parliamentary system. Okay. So, yeah, think about that. And we'll go a little longer because I just don't want to talk until the end. Hope you've enjoyed my thoughts. And I'll say, this one's a lot of it is my own thoughts on this one, on this part. But hey, it's my series. I can do whatever I want with the parts. Right. And y'all can decide on if you want to continue watching it or not. Everybody has a free will going on here. All right. So, not only did Ludlow confess his... Okay, select group, sorry. Get back where we were. Okay, observing them under the influence of hashish, he concluded that hashish affected different personalities in different ways. So he did it. He used did hashish with other people. Okay, and he saw, hey, this person doesn't react to it like me. From his research, for this is how he now referred to his experimentation. Ludlow deduced that the more powerful the personality, the more intense the drug reaction. Quiet or introverted people, he described them as lymphatic, had lesser reactions, if any at all. I don't know about that. Only vertigo, giddiness, or nausea were, he noted, common to all. By the time he joined his fraternity society, Ludlow was quite inured to whatever happened to him in his hallucinations. He had come to terms with the unexpected, and, after a pleasant experience, would sometimes deliberately take another dose before the first had fully worn off, hoping this might prolong his euphoria. The euphoria, sorry. More usually, it turned his mind towards grotesque and terrifying visions. He did not feel guilty at conducting his research, nor for his introducing others to it, but it appears he did feel somewhat shamefaced at the subterfuge involved, his religious upbringing at odds with his newly formed rebellious intellect. In the spring of 1856, Ludlow was taking as much as 4 grams of hashish tincture at a time. It's a good amount of tincture. And, of course, depending on the potency of the tincture, 4 grams of it. And interesting, he had access to that. 1854, People don't think of people using cannabis in any which way in the 19th century, but guess what, folks? I'm here to tell you, it was it got more and more common, okay, in the West and in other parts, okay? Yeah, and yeah, you could maybe say, you could make an argument that when the British took over India, and made India its colony, that and other places in the east and different parts of the world that had cannabis ingrained into their society from a long way back. And so, yeah, by the West's um, invading and taking over control of certain parts of the world that they were not from and didn't have that history, well, that had a double edge that they probably didn't expect in some ways. And that is, you know, and cannabis has something to do with that. Cannabis culture itself in the West. Okay. Reaching such a dose, 4 grams at a time, made him realize that that his research had become more than mere experimentation. It was a habit. He determined to cut his dosage to 2 grams a day. Yet there was more to this decision than prudence. As Ludlow put it, there came the appearance of deity upon the stage of my visionary life. An awful presence arrived during an hallucination in a vision, a projection from his subconscious of his father's Christian zeal and teachings. He started to see images of heaven and hell, and in one he witnessed the death of God, which greatly unnerved him. Okay, more and more. He interpreted his hashish dreams in religious or spiritual contexts. His supposed guilt was getting the better of him. Ludlow graduated from Union College in June of 1856. Of his time there, Knott was later to write, quote, he was considered here a young man of very decided talents and unimpeachable character. Having completed his college course, he left the institution esteemed alike by his companions and his instructors, as well as distinguished by literary honors. Clearly, the college president was either unaware of Ludlow's extracurricular activities or adept at writing perfidious testimonials. Well, he probably genuinely did like him. People, both things can be true. Okay? A lot of the time. Okay, that's my returning to live with his father and stepmother in Poughkeepsie. Ludlow continued with his hashish taking, trying to keep his dosage down to between 10 and 15 grains a day. So that's probably like 1 to 2 grams. But he found it difficult. This made him realize he was addicted to hashish, although he was not to know it was a psychological rather than a physical addiction, such as he might have acquired from using opiates. Yes, big difference, folks. If you are not aware, you can become psychologically habituated and arguably addicted, yes, to cannabis. But you cannot be physically addicted to it. Nope, it just doesn't happen. It is more mild on that front than caffeine. Way more mild on that physical effect front than something like caffeine, which is widely accepted in our world today. For obvious reasons. See, the effects of things, they matter. They just do. They do. And I do have a feeling why cannabis is still illicit in a lot of the world still is because it's a threat. It serves as a certain kind of threat to the powers that be, and they don't really want to deal with it on that level or on that scale. If we all would be able, if it was completely legal worldwide, completely open on that end for cannabis worldwide. All of a sudden, all the laws were removed, basically. You know. So yeah. Anyway. Okay, I need to tie this up a little. Oh, okay. I'll just end it there. Let me find my place and then I'll end it because, Lord, I can't even find where it was. I've talked too much in this one. I'm sorry. But sometimes I do that, and that's just part of what these are. You know, these weren't intended to just be dialogue reading from a book. This is me reading from a book and also talking around it. Okay? But making sure you know the difference between the two. You know, of course. And to never change the wording from the book when I am reading from the book. Okay? That's important. Okay? And I know that. So I will find my place. I just have to watch this back because I don't even know where I was. Oh, yeah, you can just blame good old short-term memory loss on that one, huh? But yeah, so I hope you liked it, and I hope you got something from the video. Good old part 12, and I'll see you back on good old Lucky 13, part 13 of Cannabis history, and I will find exactly where we were based off of where I ended, and I'll put a little mark there, and that's where we'll pick up on the next one. Y'all have a good night, and I'll see you later.